platform for institutions that want to grow in DeFi and to want to explore the DeFi world. Stuart, I leave the space to you.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. Can you see my screen okay?
Okay, I can see it. Maybe somebody from the audience could confirm as well.
Okay, I think we're good. I can see it on my screen now.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So welcome everyone. My name is Stuart Jackson. I head up the pre-sales team here at Fireblocks globally. To put in context what Fireblocks is, or at least try to, we are a digital asset and crypto custodian that allows customers, institutions to be able to maintain and hold assets on behalf of their customers or their clients. So when we're looking at Fireblocks, what I'm going to do today for these 10 minutes is really run through just a demonstration of exactly what I mean by custody, but also what I mean by transfer as well. So the ability to be able to transfer digital assets, custody them, and be able to control them in a way in which people can then have institutional lending, borrowing, and as I mentioned, custody. So what you're seeing here on screen is Fireblocks. So this is the UI view of Fireblocks. So everything that we're doing in here, there is a small exceptions in a couple of places where APIs are not viable. Equally, there are other places where APIs are more viable. So everything in terms of development and interaction with Fireblocks can be used via API. Equally, you can come in here and as an operative or as an operations person or as a compliance officer, whomever it might be within a particular organization, to actually see what's going on at any one point and see the assets, what vaults they're created in, and various other aspects. So if we take a look at the view that we see here, we've at Fireblocks, what we've done is we've created the vault structure. So the vault structure is essentially what holds a group of wallets. So if you're creating NFTs, or you're creating tokens, or you're creating assets for ERC20 or other smart contracts, or dare I say it's bond issuance, whatever it might be, what we're doing is we're creating these vaults, and inside these vaults we have these wallets. So essentially what I can do is I can build down from my vault, and I can take a look at Fireblocks DeFi wallet. So this is what we're going to operate in today, and we're going to link to it's an RSK based app in a second. But what we're going to look at is the DeFi wallet. So inside the DeFi wallet, we've got a number of assets that are actually inside that vault itself. So if I type in here RBTC, you will actually see that the RSK Smart Bitcoin is now applicable inside our environment. So those individuals that want or are holding significant amounts of RSK Smart Bitcoin or any other digital asset for that matter in the protocols that we support, if they are, i.e. not comfortable with a private key that they have access to, or only knowledge that they have access to, and they wish to go to an institution that's going to custody these assets because they may hold a significant amount, especially when we were going through last year where people were collating and hodling these types of Bitcoin, and the prices were significantly going through a growth phase last year. So people over that period of time have said, well, actually, I don't want to hold that asset any longer. I want to be able to provide that to a bank or some other institution to be able to hold on my behalf and own it effectively. However, we also want the flexibility of decentralized finance, the ability to be able to use that coin for wherever we want. So the scenario with Fireblocks is that we can leverage a number of aspects in here. So this is the institution, the enterprise function of what's going on here. So an RBTC can be held within this wallet. We've got addresses that are held and are created. These addresses, these deposit addresses, are created from what we refer to as our MPC key shares. So we don't use a single private key. We use a function within multi-party computation to break those keys into 3 key shares, and they are correlated together to communicate, to create a signature for a transaction, which is then delivered to the blockchain, which is how we achieve very high security in terms of how we can actually hold and transact those particular assets. So in here, we've got the DeFi capability of the of whatever asset that we want to connect to. Equally, if we want to be able to exchange or trade, as an example, so we can go into exchanges here and we can look at a particular exchange. We've got Bitfinex in here, which supports our BTC as well. So for argument's sake, if we were to go to Bitfinex and acquire our BTC from there, or BTC indeed, Bitcoin, then we can hold it inside that exchange and we can move it back into Fireblocks for settlement purposes. There might be a number of reasons or particular use cases where you might want to be able to hold assets within inside of the environment, move it to exchanges, move it back from exchanges. If you're market making, whatever it might be that you're trying to do in terms of trading, then Fireblocks is facilitating that movement. So what you can do is you can move your pre-funded assets from your vault that you're holding in your assets, your wallets, and you can move those to the exchange and vice versa. So you can market make on those particular trading venues. We also have a Fiat on-ramp as well. So for customers that use Signature or Silvergate, and we're actually going to supply some support for other vendors very soon. But effectively what this allows for is it allows for Fiat currency to be allowed to come onto the platform. So when you're dealing in the crypto asset and digital asset world, and you want to be able to take your funds from Fiat into whatever asset you want to mix with, then essentially you can bring that in through the Fiat ramp, process it through your systems in here, and then make a counter or settlement process either in crypto or, if you so wish, back into Fiat. Now, one of the things that Fireblocks is doing here really is, as we said, we're custodying the assets. So we're holding those via the deposit addresses. Obviously, we're releasing those transactions through the private key mechanism in multi-party computation. But ultimately, what we're also building is this network of trusted environments or trading venues or liquidity providers. So when you're holding on Fireblocks, it's not just a case of being able to custody it and then provide into DeFi, and we'll walk through that in a second. But it's also the ability to be able to hold those assets and then move them into a liquidity provider and vice versa. Equally, if you have a situation where you want to trade with someone more frequently, then you can actually set up a secure communication between two entities inside the Fireblocks network. So if you are a Fireblocks customer, you have the ability to be able to communicate to other Fireblocks customers. So in this particular instance, we're just showing a list of active customers right now that are available through the network connections. So what they have done is made their workspaces available or visible within the network connection. So anybody who's a Fireblocks customer comes onto the system, they can attach to this network connection and they can start sending funds between the entities. Now, the purpose of this is to try to simplify the problems that you have when you're sharing crypto addresses. The problem you have typically is you have to share your deposit address. You have to make sure that deposit address is not interfered or changed en route. And you also need to make sure that when you send a micro transaction, that the recipient receives it and it's the recipient that's telling you that it's okay. And that's a problem, because if you've got a situation where you have, let's say, 10 deposit addresses going bilaterally, you've got a problem where you've got to make sure that all 20 effective addresses are sent programmatically and in a way which you know are secure. The challenge with that is obviously that might not necessarily be the case. So what we have is we have a process here which we use an arbitrary network ID to identify a user, and we can attach to an entity within inside the network that allows that flow of funds to happen. So what we can do is we'll go back here to the DeFi address. We'll go back to Fireblocks DeFi wallet. And we can look in here and see that inside the DeFi wallet, as I mentioned earlier, we have our BTC. We actually have the address for that particular coin available to us. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to look at how we can connect to RSK providers. So whether that's through this infrastructure using our DeFi apps. So we have a DeFi apps section on here, which allows you to attach to wallet connected apps or dApps. So what we can show here is if we go to RSK Open Finance and we can look at the ecosystem on under this section here under wallets, you can see that Fireblocks is there. So we are now an active participant within the ecosystem of RSK. And we can also see, if I keep going, we look at the sovereign connectivity. So in here, I can look at connect my wallet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my mobile device. I can click on mobile. It shows me the QR code here, as it would do, as you would expect for the app. What I can do is I can go to Fireblocks, the application running on my mobile. I can choose the workspace that's linked within Fireblocks. It initiates the app connection, and now what it's doing is it's tying this environment back to the deposit addresses or the environment that we just had. So I can see my Fireblocks environment. I want to be on the RSK Smart Bitcoin mainnet, and we can hit connect. And at that point, what happens is we can actually see in the background, this is now connected a wallet to this infrastructure. And now I can go on and I can either promote or provide Bitcoin to convert to RBTC. And ultimately, we could also buy sovereign coins on this as well. So the idea is that all of the structure of Fireblocks is to host custody assets, but also make it much easier to move into DeFi apps. And really the critical part of this is that the private keys themselves are not held within the browser session that we have here. That's using Fireblocks' security in MPC, hardware-backed security, to make sure that any transaction or custody of those assets through the smart chain, through the smart contract process, is always secured through governance layers as well. So we're always making sure that your movement of assets are tracked, transacted correctly, and as I say, secured. So just a final word from me. Fireblocks provides this, as I mentioned, through the UI, and you can see these functions in here. We also have the capability, as I mentioned, to actually provide assets directly with counterparties or trading venues or liquidity providers through our network. And then equally, we can also provide a DeFi SDK. So those developers that really want to hook to a programmatic way of communicating to a smart contract and interacting with it directly, they can leverage the Fireblocks DeFi SDK. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stuart. Very interesting. Indeed, it's really interesting to see how you are like removing this, friction layers of institutions to try and understand better how they could make the most out of DeFi protocols and even DeFi platforms such as Sovereign, right? It's also interesting to see how you're building this network, right, of institutions that could interact with each other and transact with each other in within the DeFi world and with cryptocurrencies. So thank you for that. We do have a question here, and it's about RIF. RIF is a token on the RIF economy on top of RSK. They're asking about it.
Yeah, sorry. So what I should have done is I probably should have added all the wallets that we actually currently support within the system. So I chose the path of least resistance, which was RBTC. I could have added RIF as well. So anything that sits within the RSK structure in terms of a coin or a recognized asset within the environment, we can also add that as well. So my apologies, I should have put that on there. But essentially, you can see that too.
Perfect, Stuart. Thank you very much for the information and for showing us the platform of Fireblocks. Really interesting indeed.
Thank you.